Welcome back, Weekend. Good to see you again, all the way from Malaysia. Just to update you, we have finished reading the book, The Noble Eightfold Path. Now we are going freestyle. We just pick random article or short essays, then we read together. Usually we can finish it within a few days, less than a week. Today, when I browsed through some of the essays, I thought of reading this. Refuge in the Buddha, written in 1998, again by Bhikkhu Bodhi. The first step in entering the Buddhist path is going for refuge to the triple gem. And the first of the three gems that we approach as refuge is the Buddha, the enlightened one. Because the act of going for refuge to the Buddha marks the beginning of a new chapter in our life, it is worth our while to repeatedly pause and reflect upon the significance of this momentous step. Too often we are prone to take our first steps for granted, yet it is only we review these steps from time to time in a deepening awareness of the implication that we can be sure the following steps we take will bring us closer to our desired destination. Okay, for the next paragraph, Brother Waken, would you like to read?
The going for refuge to the Buddha is not a single action which occurs only once and is then completed with absolute finality. It is, or should be, a continually evolving process which matures in tandem with our practice and understanding of the Dhamma. To go for refuge does not imply that at the outset we already possess a clear grasp of the dangers that make a refuge necessary or of the goal toward which we aspire. Comprehension of these matters grows gradually over time. But to the extent that we have actually gone for refuge with sincere intent, we should make an earnest effort to sharpen and deepen our understanding of the objects to which we have turned as the basis for our deliverance.
Thanks, Brother Waken. This paragraph does imply there is a gradual process of our refuge in the Buddha. Our faith in the Buddha will gradually strengthen. It's not directly from the beginning. Here, at the outset, we already possess a clear grasp of the dangers, the first one, or of the goal toward which we aspire. The next paragraph, Sister Shromi, would you like to read?
In going for refuge to the Buddha, it is most essential at the outset to clarify our conception of what a Buddha is and how he functions as a refuge. If such clarification is lacking, our sense of refuge can easily become tainted by erroneous views. We may ascribe to the Buddha a status he never claimed for himself, as when we regard him as the incarnation of a god, as the emanation of the absolute, or as a personal savior. On the other hand, we may detract from the exalted status to which the Buddha is properly entitled, as when we regard him simply as a benevolent sage, as an unusually astute Asiatic philosopher, or as a genius of meditative technology.
Thanks, Sister Shromi. I think this tendency is quite common to put the Buddha on a pedestal. Some of this example, when we regard him as the incarnation of a God, as the emanation of the Absolute, or as a personal savior, then we have tainted our sense of refuge with erroneous views. So let's define here emanation.
Emanation.
Emanation, something which originates or issues from a source. The second definition, a being or force which is a manifestation of God in various mystical traditions. So as the product, consequence of the Absolute, or even as a personal savior. On the other hand, we may also have detract him from the exalted status, or we can, some people simply regard him as benevolent sage, unusually astute, ascetic philosopher, or genius of meditative technology. It's quite descriptive, the way Bhikkhu Bodhi writes it. So, what is the correct way to regard the Buddha as a refuge? Let's read on to find out. Sister Saikyam, would you like to read?
The correct view of the Buddha's self-enlightenment.
Sorry, Saikyam, a little bit soft. Maybe speak closer to your laptop.
A correct view of the Buddha's nature would see him in terms of the title he assigned to himself. As a fully self-enlightened one, Sama Sambuddha, he is self-enlightened because he has awakened to the essential truth of existence entirely on his own, without a teacher or guide. He is fully enlightened because he has comprehended these truths completely in all their ramifications and implications. And as a Buddha, he has not only fathomed these truths himself, but has also taught them to the world so that others may awaken from the long sleep of ignorance and attain the fruits of liberation.
Thanks again. So what is the correct view? We start with the title he claims for himself, a fully self-enlightened one, Sama Sambuddha. He is self-enlightened because he has awakened to the truth on his own without any teacher or guide. He is fully enlightened because he has comprehended the truth completely in all their ramifications and implications. Let's define quickly ramifications.
Ramification.
A complex or unwelcome consequence of an action or event. A subdivision of a complex structure or process. This one is a technical definition. The action of ramifying or the state of being ramified. Consequence, result, aftermath, outcome. In all the aftermath and implications. Lastly, the Buddha not only fathomed this truth himself, but also taught them to the world. Yeah. That's how we are still in touch with the Dharma, even in this age. Okay, next paragraph. Sister Aikim, would you like to read?
Taking refuge in the Buddha is an act anchored in a particular historical individual. The recluse Gautama, the scion of the Sakyang clan, who lived and taught in the Ganges Valley in the 5th century BC. When we take refuge in the Buddha, we rely upon this historical individual and the body of instruction that stems from him. It is important to stress this point in view of the fashionable notion that taking refuge in the Buddha means that we take refuge in the Buddha mind within ourselves, or in the universal principle of enlightenment. Such ideas allowed to go unchecked can lead to the belief that anything we contrive in the flights of our imagination can qualify as true Dharma. To the contrary, the Buddhist tradition insists that when we go for refuge to the Buddha, we place ourselves under the guidance of one who is distinctly different from ourselves, one who has scaled heights that we have barely begun to glimpse.
Thanks, Sister IQ. Let's try to understand this paragraph a little bit. Taking refuge in the Buddha is an act anchored in a particular historical individual. The recluse Gautama, the Saiyan, I'm not sure how to pronounce this.
Saiyan.
The Saiyan, a young shoot twig of a plant, a descendant of a notable family. This is more appropriate. The descendant of the Sakyan clan who lived and taught in the Ganges Valley. When we take refuge in the Buddha, we rely upon this individual. Now, this sentence, I think we need to reread. It is important to stress this point in view of the fashionable notion that taking refuge in the Buddha means that we take refuge in the Buddha mind within ourselves or in the universal principle of enlightenment. This too is the one that is not correct, at least according to this text. So don't get confused. These two, the one that we should take refuge in is one particular individual in the historical aspect. Why? Why is this two ideas not the appropriate refuge? Such ideas allowed to go unchecked can lead to the belief that anything we contrive in the flights of our imagination can qualify as true Dharma. To the contrary, the Buddhist tradition insists that when we go for refuge to the Buddha, we place ourselves under the guidance of one who is distinctly different from ourselves, one who has scaled heights that we have barely begun to glimpse. We are only touching the surface, despite having studied the Dharma for years. Okay, Sister Chai Kwan, would you like to read the next one?
But when we rely upon the recluse Gautama as our refuge, we do not apprehend him merely as a particular individual, a wise and sensible sage. We apprehend him rather as a Buddha. It is his Buddhahood, his possession of the full range of excellent qualities that come with perfect enlightenment, that makes the recluse Gautama a refuge. In any cosmic epoch, a Buddha is that being who first breaks through the darkness of ignorance, encompassing the world, and rediscovers the lost path to Nirvana, the cessation of suffering. He is the pioneer, the trailblazer, who discovers the path and proclaims the path so that others, by following his tracks, may extinguish their ignorance, arrive at true wisdom, and break the fetters that tie them to the round of repeated birth and death. Thank you.
Thanks, Sister Choi Kwan. Okay, I think I'll read one more paragraph. For the refuge in the Buddha to be genuine, it must be accompanied by a commitment to the Buddha as an incomparable teacher, as unexcelled and unsurpassed. Strictly speaking, the historical Buddha is not unique, since there have been earlier fully enlightened ones who have arisen in past epochs, and there will be others who will arise in future epochs as well. But in any one world system, it is impossible for a second Buddha to arise while the teaching of another Buddha is still extant. And thus, in terms of human history, we are justified in regarding the Buddha as a unique teacher, unequaled by any other spiritual teacher known to humanity. It is this readiness to recognize the Buddha as the unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed, the teacher of gods and humans, that is the hallmark of an authentic act of taking refuge in the Buddha. Let's take a look at this word. Extant. Okay. Can be both extant or also extant. Still in existence, surviving. Okay, we have
epoch. The word, yes. Epoch. Yep.
Epoch.
Yeah, epoch, but epoch is also possible here. You see the sound real. So epoch or epoch, both are okay. A particular period of time in history or person's life. Thanks, Waken, for the suggesting alternative pronunciation. Okay, we read almost around half, and we will continue tomorrow. So far, any questions or comments?
I like what Bhikkhu Bodhi said about history, right? We recognize the Buddha as a distinct or a particular historical individual.
Yes.
And he said, if we don't keep that in mind, we might turn within, so to speak. Some people say like 佛在心中, the Buddha is in our heart, which is true, right? The living Dhamma, the teaching of the Buddha is in our hearts. That's true. But we cannot let that sort of turn ourselves into the embodiment of wisdom when we're not yet completely cultivated or completely awakened yet. Sometimes people say, oh, this is people take their own views to be like, oh, this is the Buddha's teachings, or this is the Buddha's views, and that is a danger. Bhikkhu Bodhi said, such ideas allowed to go unchecked can lead to the belief that anything we contrive in the flights of our imagination can qualify as true Dhamma. So I think the key idea here is to really distinguish, okay, what are the true teachings of the Buddha, and what is a result or what comes from our own defilements, our own delusion, and our own imagination. So that's of key importance. Yes.
Okay, thanks for adding on, Brother Waken. Anyone else would like to? Yes, Sister Chekwan.
Brother Marcel, is it possible to explain further what Buddha mind within ourselves and the universal principle? Is it when Buddha mind within ourselves, we always think there's a Buddha within ourselves?
Well,
it doesn't mean.
Yeah, thanks for the question. This lines itself is not explained in the paragraph, but I suppose this idea is popular that some people actually regards the Buddha as something within that we can discover inside, rather than some teacher 2,500 years ago has taught the Dhamma for 45 years. And the distinction here is that they think the Buddha is not a person, it's not someone who actually taught the Dhamma, but they actually think it's something inside within us, which actually this paragraph tries to distinguish. And for the second one, the universal principle of enlightenment, this, I'm not totally sure what Bhikkhu Bodhi means by this, to be honest. But this, to me, sounds like universal principle for me usually sounds like the Dharma itself. Yeah. But here, the focus is actually refuge in the Buddha itself, rather than any kind of principle. Yeah. We are focusing on a particular individual who taught the Dharma instead of the principle itself. Not sure if that makes sense.
I think that's pretty close, Marcel. The idea here, as it reads to me, the idea here is distancing. I mean, Marcel, you're right. Like distancing the refuge or the object of refuge, like from the very person of the Buddha or the historical reality of the Buddha. Like the Buddha mind within ourselves. Some people might think, or some people might say that, oh, 我们都有佛性, we all have the Buddha nature. We all have the Buddha mind, and therefore, like we're taking refuge in ourselves, so to speak, when we go for refuge to the Buddha. That might be true in some ways, but that isn't the whole truth. You know, that isn't the entire foundation of our practice or the foundation of our refuge. We're going for refuge to the historical reality of the person of the Buddha, because he is the one who lived and walked and spoke, and he spoke the Dhamma, he taught the Dhamma. So that there is a historical reality, there's a historical dimension to the very transmission of the Buddha, you know, more than 2,000 years ago. I think that historical perspective is important to keep in mind. As for the universal principle of enlightenment, my comment is that this mindset takes it to the abstract, which again, the Dhamma is, you know, in some ways abstract. You know, the Dhamma is timeless, right? Akaliko and so on. But this, Master said it right? That is the second refuge, right? Or the second object of refuge, the refuge to the refuge in the Dhamma. But as the first object of refuge, the Buddha is a living person, right? Like taking it to the universal principle of enlightenment. Some people say like, when we go for refuge to the Buddha, we're actually going for refuge to like the idea of awakening, right? The idea of enlightenment. In that sense, it's taking into the abstract. Like we are having faith in the fact that, say, enlightenment can be attained or awakening can be attained. Maybe there's that idea. I'm just trying to see what it reads to me. Yeah, like the idea of awakening. Does that make sense, Sister Choi Kwan? Something like that.
Yeah, more or less I can understand it. I'll try to reflect on this. Thank you very much, Brother Ricken and Brother Marcel.
Yeah, I would say principle of awakening or principle of enlightenment is valid, is true. It's just that we don't want to distance that, or we don't want to take that away from the person of the Buddha. Yeah, that's how I would see it or how I would read it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks Sister Chegan for the question, and thanks Brother Waken for adding on. Any other comments before we wrap up for today? If not, we will continue the reading tomorrow. For now, let's do a dedication. 愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了。普愿罪障悉消除，世世常行菩萨道。阿弥陀佛。Till we meet again, may we be guided by the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a protected Friday ahead. Thanks everyone for participating. I'll see you guys next time.